All right. Hello, guys. We're going to start today's live stream. It's about creative teaching. As you can well imagine, I'm going to invite a very interesting person today. So, bear with us. All right. A few technicalities first. Okay. Right.
Hello.
Great. Great. Hey. So, sound check. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, everything is
Great.
great. And
Same
you?
here. Likewise. Alrighty then, let's get to it. We're gathered here today to talk about something that runs in our blood, let's put it that way, which is creative teaching. And I have a very special guest here, Anastasia. Anastasia is one of those teachers who actually tries to make a difference. And I think it was a good idea to invite her to talk about creative teaching in the classroom. So give it up for Nastya. Nastya, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hello everyone. Well, I've been teaching for about 7 years and I got my CELTA certificate in 2020. I have
Mhm.
4 modules of TKT, but of course it doesn't um, identify like who I am. Yes, I just think that personality is what that matters, right?
Mhm.
I really like teaching, and I just came across the idea that students' books are not always enough, so I have to add something more, because yeah, we have to work on vocabulary, we have to work on grammar more, and that's why I think that I am a creative teacher. So,
Yeah, that makes two of us.
mhm.
That's why we synced together, yeah, to talk about today's topic. Well, generally, it looks like even having those certificates and trainings is definitely not enough, right? We always have to dive deeper.
Well, yeah, yes. So you can never stop, you have to move on. Yes, there is always room for improvement. So that's why I really enjoy talking to colleagues, like learning something new, observing, reading their posts on Instagram, because I can always find something that I've never
Hmm.
thought before. And
Agree.
that's actually, yeah, I get this inspiration from many colleagues, like, for example, from you. Yes, I've been following you for maybe like 2 or 3 years. And yeah, I joined your community on VK first, and then I found
Hmm.
you on Instagram, and that's how I started following you. And that's amazing,
Oh,
really an amazing teacher, really.
and I mean, talk about a good teacher too, because I noticed you there always being active, like suggesting ideas and some alternatives. And I thought, wow, she's cool. And then I actually stumbled upon some of your stories where you were teaching a group of your students, because as far as I know, you teach like from A1 to B2 for sure, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I saw some kind of devices and tools that you devised, and I was like, wow, cool. She's one of us, the creative ones. And then probably kind of, I made a mental check, so to say, about our future live stream when I started live streaming, you see. So here we are, and the topic is creative teaching, why textbooks won't suffice. You kind of mentioned, Nastya, that, it's never enough, but why? Let's try to elaborate a little bit on this.
Mhm. Well, the thing is that if to talk about vocabulary, for example, yes, let me get this straight. I use textbooks, yes, but again, I
Mhm.
have to add some extra materials, even those materials which are provided by publishing houses, like which
Right.
are included in the course, they're not enough. Yeah, because, well, sometimes they might seem a bit odd, like, or mundane, probably. So I have to bring, like, I want to spice up my lesson. That's why I want to create.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if to talk about recycling vocabulary grammar, it's definitely not enough. I know that most teachers just stick to using textbooks and they just put them, like they consider them to be the cornerstone
Mhm.
educational process. Yes, but at the same time, I think it's kind of misconception probably.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how I got. It's because when I first started teaching, I tend to use students' books just like everyone else. Yeah, I didn't know how to work in a different way. Yeah,
Right.
and I never thought that I'm a creative teacher myself until I started working in a language center where my boss, well, she's an amazing teacher, really, and
Mhm.
she kind of discovered this feature in me as I observed her lessons. I learned a lot from her, and she told me that, okay, you can do that. Yes, you can plan your lessons even without students' books and without any course books. So that's something you were cut out for. So, and that's how I
Here
started
we
doing
go. Yeah, here we go. So it looks like your creative teaching and persona arose from something important, which is the need to meet every student's need. Yeah, so to say, right? It's
Mhm.
definitely not a one size fits all tool, the textbook, right? That's why we
No,
need that.
not, of course not, yes. I
For
even
sure.
have the students of the same level, yes, but it doesn't mean that I use the same materials with them, you know. It depends on their like preferences, of course, their abilities. Like some uh,
Mhm.
students have great like listening skills, yes. So some don't have that, so that's why I have to vary, and that's how I pick materials, yes, according to my students' needs. Yeah. So what about you?
Same here, same here. I actually went kind of full textbook free, and then started creating my own course books. But I gotta admit, there's so much about textbooks that can be also taken into account. Like, for example, speaking activities, they're really good, right? They
Mhm.
create this communicative environment, and also supplementary activities that I use. And even the themes names, those themes themselves, some of them are really very much topical. But I just learned that since I have my own kind of mental mind map of learning and teaching, that's why I would decided to go it alone, so to say. However, I think it makes perfect sense to expand on what exactly we mean by not enough, which is won't suffice, right? You have sent us some questions, guys. Thank you so much. We can't but appreciate that. And I think we're going to follow some of them, yeah, and expand along the way. Shall I read the first one?
Well,
Or
yeah, I think, yeah, or we can skip it. I think we kind of answered it now.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of the first one here, it actually said, is it okay to use a good textbook as a basis and complement it with additional materials? Duh, of course, that's what we're talking about, right? So no one says like, you know what, like ditch it. Yeah, don't use it. I mean, if you like it, yeah, if it fits your students' needs, if you know how to work with them, sure, do that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe my need to go textbook free comes from this kind of fact that I don't know my way around to textbook. You never know, right? Now, then the next question is about you, Anastasia. Can you read this one?
Will textbook free approach ever supersede the books? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow.
What
What's your
a
take
great
on
one, right? Supersede, by the way, was a new one for me. When I first read this kind of question, I was like, oh, supersede. Wow, a new word. Good to know. Can you explain what it means, Anastasia?
Oh, it's like replace, yeah, replace or even kind of how to say that. Well, we get rid of books, yes, like and
Yeah.
never use them again, yes. So, but I personally think that it's never gonna happen because still lots of teachers depend on textbooks, and especially like those who just start their teaching career, right? So they have to have this basis, yes, where to start, like the starting point, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why they have to deal with something. Well, they need something to make their teaching a bit more understandable, probably,
Mhm.
and if I can say so, like visible, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know how to work with vocabulary or language or grammar, sorry, yeah, and you don't have a textbook, you can just make some mess, in the lesson, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, and that's actually a thing which is kind of quite common during CELTA courses, because CELTA course is aimed at the novice teachers
Right.
who want to start their teaching career, right, or who are just beginning their teaching path, and that's why we were supposed to use students' books. Yeah, of course, it doesn't mean that you have to follow students' book like in every activity, in every exercises, but you're free to redesign some of them, like
Mhm.
to omit some of them. Yeah, it's really welcome there. Yeah, but at the same time, we needed to use that. Yeah, to use those. Yeah, so.
That's a good thing you mentioned. You said, of course you can redesign. That's the problem with most of us. We're afraid of actually trying to, skipping things. So
Mhm.
you, as an avid, like, teacher who actually knows their way around books too, would you say that sometimes even the structure that is suggested in the book is okay to be tweaked in a way?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because, yeah, the students' books are mostly designed for teaching groups, and I teach individuals, for example. Yes, so some activities
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
won't work. That's why I have to like dump them, right, or teach them, yeah, right? And yeah, if to talk about some text or some audios, yes, if I see that it's too easy or maybe it's too difficult, I can just simplify it. I mean, like I can make up another task for students
Mm-hmm.
to understand the audio, right? Or I can just omit some parts of the text which are kind of irrelevant. It depends, you know, like there is no specific way. Yes, there is no certain rule how to do that. Yes, that's the thing. You have to adjust material according to your students' needs, right? So.
Yeah, that's the operative word. By the way, we have a comment here. Tom says, agree, using different student books also helps to discover new activities and understand what works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For sure, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, you might want to start with a textbook if you're a novice teacher, especially if you haven't had much of your own learning experience. Yeah, if you like, if you studied with a teacher or with a group, yeah, or in school, for sure, that would work. By the way, you mentioned sometimes, you know, you choose activities that might not work for some students and everything, and then some listening activities. Did you notice that sometimes, like, you have even the same level of students, but some students find listening tasks very easy because of this caretaker speech, you know, like you're trying to make sure that you create this element of success, and some will find it very difficult. What do you
Yeah.
do in this case?
Well, of course, I know my students quite well. Yeah, well, if we've been working like for some time, yeah, and before, well, I usually get ready for lessons, right? Sometimes the preparation might take like 20 or 30 minutes, and sometimes an hour or 2 hours even. And I try to anticipate the possible problems, you know, like what might happen if this audio might be like too difficult. And again, I can change the questions, for example, or I can pre-teach more vocabulary before doing that, you know, yeah, or I can even skip it and replace it with something else, which would be more suitable for this particular student. Well, for example, I had this lesson, I work with Speak Out textbook. If you know them, just let us know in the comments if you work with this course. And one of my students is really scared of flying, and one of the units, he's like A2 level probably, and yeah, he hates talking about flying at all. And one of the units contained video, something connected with waiting at the airport. And of course, I couldn't use that because I know that this topic like triggers him, right? And he won't be able to express his opinion freely. He will be like. Yes, that's why I decided to skip it. I know it's not connected with language itself, yes, but it's about this effective filter, right? If the student feels uncomfortable when talking about the topic, why to use it, right? You can just skip it or replace it with something else. So I had to find some other activities, yeah. So.
That's a good one, Anastasia, because you know what I thought? I remember we kind of talked a little bit about this idea of taboo subjects. Can you also elaborate on that? It looks like, before you tell us about this thing, that even such topics as flying, travels, and family can be considered taboo.
Yeah, right.
Can you tell us about that thing? Because to me, that was new, you know?
Yeah. So when we were kind of discussing the questions, well, or thinking about what to say, why textbooks won't suffice. Textbooks represent kind of, you know, this sterile environment, you know, this one where you cannot find any controversial topics, probably controversial. Yeah. And some students really want to, so they are eager to talk about politics, you know, they're eager to talk about some social movements, yes, or some social issues, and that's where we can use these PARSNIPs. So if you know what PARSNIPs are, yeah, or if you don't know, I can explain. Yes, so PARSNIPs is an acronym for there was politics, then alcohol, yes, sex, religion, isms like sexism or feminism, whatever.
Ageism.
And then narcotics and something else. Yes, so each letter stands for one of these taboo topics, which are usually kind of avoided. You know, the do not want to be risky, and they don't want to dwell on these topics, right? Because it can be quite dangerous. And again, it depends on the environment and the atmosphere, like yeah, your relationship with students as well, right? So, but if you feel comfortable discussing different topics with students, why not to bring it up? Because they will definitely talk about it outside the classroom. Yes, they will hear information about it. And even when we watch some TV series or videos in English, yes, they discuss such interesting or important burning issues like feminism, for example, right? Or social issues and so on. And you cannot just turn your blind eye on it, right? Because it exists in the world, right? So we have to talk about it, if you see what I mean.
Agreed. This was kind of revelation to me, because then, you know what, I looked back at my experience working with teens, you know, like when I was just starting out, and I realized that sometimes even like, you know, not those taboo topics at first sight can be taboo, because I had this student, you know, he was like 13 years old, very hyper and everything, you know, this kind of social butterfly. However, it looks like we didn't have much of a conversation with his mom beforehand, because she never explained that his father passed and he was like a doting son, you know? And then in my first topic was family. And I started pestering him with questions about family, about like mom's roles, you know, father roles or whatever. And he kind of started being emotional and a little bit kind of, you see? So it looks like it's important to, first of all, if you deal with teenagers, make sure what, first of all, makes them tick. Yeah, and what makes them untick, so to speak. Yeah, what triggers them. Because sometimes those kind of insensitive subjects can be very sensitive, you see? So PARSNIPs is one of them, by the way, especially the isms,
Yeah.
right? However, when I went full textbook free, I actually created a textbook based on all those parsnips, you see.
Oh,
I
really?
just realized that, you know, we talked, it was a mass media course at university. We talked about artificial intelligence, gender inclusive language, you know, social injustice and everything, because it is still there. It is relevant. It's just a bit of a minefield, yeah, in a way, but it needs to be talked about because we lack awareness in a way, yeah, in some respect. So I kind of talked about that, but again, those were like year 4 students, year 3 students, and it made perfect sense. And this is why it could be one of the downsides of a textbook, yeah? Like the topics sometimes can be cliche, but they also need some spicing up, right?
Right.
Right? So, also, by the way, we had a question, an additional one, right? It says here, I just wonder what you make of it, Anastasia. By the way, guys watching, and by the way, thank you so much, like 20 of us for sure. Can you please write whether you are a textbook approach teacher or a textbook free approach teacher? And if you are one, what textbooks you use? Just type, okay? And before we do this, we have another comment here. You're missing one important point. Tailor-made course is time-consuming and hence rather expensive. But now when this approach is heavily promoted, students don't realize that the price is the issue. Right. We're not actually missing it. We're just about to talk about that, you see? So, because again, everyone now has their needs. They come into the classroom, they want to make sure their teacher meets their needs. And a course book could be one of none of those needs, so to say. You see, so we're going to talk about that. Thank you so much for this, Cherry Savvy. Also, remember our mass media classes and Alex is saying, yes, Artem is talking from experience. He was one of my students. And the question was, maybe it's better to take one book, skip parts, as you said, is too confident about, and add some authentic materials. Yeah. Also, the question was, why reinvent the wheel? Of this, by the way. Are we reinventing the wheel when we spice it up or even create our own handouts? What do you have to say?
Well, I would say that, yeah, I usually take one book, yeah, and I add some extra materials, yes. So about reinventing the wheel, I think that you're still not reinventing the wheel because you are kind of suiting you're trying to suit your students' needs, right?
Right.
And there is no such a textbook which will do it like completely. Yeah, because the textbooks are created for for an average student, right? Well, I feel perfectly fine with that. Yes, that's what I do actually. So I don't mind taking a student's book because, you know, we're all overloaded with this like working hours, like this contact hours, they're called,
Right.
right?
Contact.
And, yeah, I often find myself unable or running out of time, and I cannot, you know, like make up anything else because it doesn't always work. Well, this way that I can just, you know, create the like this no prep activity, if you see what I mean. I still have to spend some time. Yeah. So I guess that can be the way out. Why not? So again, we cannot like put forward our strong opinions, right? So I cannot say that I have the strong opinion. Yes, I'm quite flexible on the topic. So if you feel comfortable using a textbook and adding something else, why not? This is your choice, right? If you feel comfortable, if you feel okay with that, why not to do that, right? And if your students are like satisfied with your lessons, yes, and they feel that they're knowledge is getting like growing, right? So why
Yeah.
not do that? Yes. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. I know for sure there are different kind of psyche types of students, you know, those who will come and tell you, listen, grammar matters in my class with you,
Yeah.
and I want you to make sure that you explain all the intricacies of grammar. So let's take grammar and use, for example, yeah, for lack of a better book on my mind right now, and then kind of work with it. Some will say, listen, I need it for my travels. So what do you do with Speak Out then, right? You can't just use functional language all the time.
Of
So you
course.
might to resort to Hot English Magazine Travel Edition. I think you have heard of this one, with a huge amount of units, you know, and they all focus on travels.
Mm-hmm.
Some will say, listen, I want phraseology. Yeah, I want to make sure that my speech sounds authentic, appropriate, yeah, and adult enough, since I'm an adult. So that means that a textbook won't suffice. Some will say, I'm coming for a traditional course book. I want to make sure that, you know, levels are part of my growth. Yeah, I'm progressing. Why not? 50-50. Can you read this one, Anastasia? Because it's like it disappeared, the message.
Yeah, just a moment. So 50/50, I make students' books and follow topic order. Uh-huh. Oh,
Dan
so
gave me.
yeah, okay. Yeah, like believe me, when students' books don't satisfy me, I do my own and swamp, yeah, with
Stand
questions.
with question. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I love questions. You know what? I know what Tom is talking about. I need to also kind of mention that since I'm kind of a textbook free teacher, or I use my own course books based on TV series, what I do is I have my own kind of mind map of how topics should go if it's not a course book based on TV series. Like, you know, I know for sure that, you know, vocabulary comes with grammar embedded. Yeah. And that there are certain topics that you study when you're at like A1 or B1. Yeah. So I made this kind of list, and what I did was, by the way, it's a good thing to do, I think, for novice teachers, is that I started filling out those folders with themes, with various materials, you know, like for listening, speaking, or whatever, from different resources, trying to make sure that I can construct my own lesson based on it. Also making sure that we have system in place, which
Mhm.
requires a lot of expertise. That's why most of us resort to textbooks most of the time and just teach by it, right? Because we're afraid that the system would be lost. Yeah, and again, it makes perfect sense, of course. Yeah, if you feel that unconfident, it's fine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I see your
for
point. Yes,
sure.
you have to kind of, well, if it's possible, you know, like if it's possible to say it, just to put it this way, you have to kind of leave it, you know, you have to experience the system which is presented in the student's book first. Well, that's my like point of view, yeah. Um,
Exactly.
and then after you kind of you've been there, yes, you've seen this one, and then you can transform it and make something of your own. You know, like yeah. I
Mm,
also know I've been working for like so many years as with students' books, and I know how like vocabulary topics topics or vocabulary correlates with some particular grammar if we talk about A1 or A2 levels, yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons I don't think it's possible to, you know, like switch like units when we like follow the student's book, because everything is connected, everything is linked, so you cannot
Right.
just come from one stage to another, as it happened, for example, in one of the schools where I used to teach us. It had this kind of crazy system where you could, well, where students had this opportunity to like to come to the lesson, to attend lessons at any time, like from Monday till Friday. So the lessons were based on the same course book, but I don't know how it worked. Like I still can't wrap my head around that, because some groups started the students book from the first unit, and other groups started the students book from the sixth unit, for example. Yes.
Mm,
Education process went in cycles, you know, like when they finish the course book, they start again. So nobody actually launched any groups for newcomers, for like students who just started learning languages. I think it works for B2 levels, probably when you are kind of aware of all the like main grammar constructions, right? And you have this vocabulary, like lots of vocabulary, yes, with you. But if to talk about A1 or A2 students, so they came, for example, and they were put in this group which is on the sixth unit. So how can they do that if they haven't even studied the verb to be yet, right? But and they were supposed to talk about like present continuous, for example. So for me, it just
wow.
didn't work out. Yes.
Wait, let me get this straight, and for everyone here, what you're trying to say is that there are like a few groups. One of them would start at the same course book, but with unit 1. The
Yeah.
others would start it with any unit a teacher preferred. Yeah?
No, it was unit 6. Yes, no, like
Unit
starting from the
6.
beginning. Yes, yeah.
Which means if you skip a class, you could like attend some other classes, like you can park as students, like we
Yeah,
talked with Alex, so they could like catch up on it or talk about a different topic.
yeah.
B and A1.
Yeah, right. And the thing is that by having such a unique selling point, you know, they promoted this idea of
Mhm.
fast learning or something, you know, like, okay, you can just complete this level twice faster than in usual schools, for example. You see, when you just have like lessons twice a week, for example, you know.
Right.
So, yeah.
To me, that sounds not a good as not a good idea because it looks like it's like you know what it's like going overboard with this fact that you need to meet students' demands. Students don't know how to exactly achieve them, yeah, and
Yeah.
you're like trying to sell them this kind of do what you want approach, yeah, but at the same time they will fail because you like start studying to be and then you talk about like presidents of America,
Mhm.
whatever. Like what? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds like a bunch of hooey to me. Completely logical,
Yeah.
yes, Deja also says. Exactly. You know what? I'm also thinking of reasons why I decided to go it alone. And I think you might support me on this one. If you don't, fine. We're all different strokes for different folks. What I've been thinking about, and I think it's going to be like the epitome of today's conversation because it will help us, yeah, grow in terms of the discussion, is that what I lack with textbooks, whatever course book that is the amount of vocabulary recycling. You know,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
like the terms are good. Most of the time, the language is good, even though graded. We'll talk about that, yeah? And sometimes a little bit too academic. But I don't like it that you can't actually go back to the phrases and have some sort of extra activities that would help you, yeah, at the beginning of the class to successfully retrieve the vocabulary, recycle it, yeah? So it's like we have units after unit going on, full of activities, but it doesn't feel like the vocab is there, you know,
Mhm.
like the same vocab. That's why I thought of this cycle that I'm sure you've heard of and you use it subconsciously, even if you don't know the words, guys, and the terms. This kind of vocabulary learning cycle that, by the way, can be read about in a very interesting book. It's the Red Book by Cambridge. It's called Learning Vocabulary in Another Language by ISP Nation. I will make sure to include it into the post too with Anastasia. So the point is, there's this vocabulary cycle that you have to go through with every word to internalize it. Yeah, as we say in Russian, пропустить через себя слово.
Mhm.
As far as I remember, it includes like 5 stages, like noticing, that I think we'll talk about today, yeah, and activities, retrieval,
Mhm.
creative use, vocabulary depth, and recycling. And of course, everything needs time. So with noticing, everything is pretty clear, right? We like start unit 1, we notice the phrases, the teacher is there, the expertise is there, everyone notices a phrase, right? But how about retrieval and creative use? Let's talk about noticing in general. How do you understand noticing, by the way, Anastasia? Noticing a phrase or a word.
Okay, so that's, for example, when you like read a text, yes, or read a sentence, and you notice that, okay, so I don't know this word. What's the meaning, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes my students ask me, okay, what is that? Yes, and that's where I have to come up with some ICQ questions, sorry,
Mhm.
ICQ questions, right, to help them to understand. But yeah, even if it doesn't work, it happens sometimes to me, yes. Well, we can find some like translation probably, yes, or I can
Mhm.
make like I can ask them some questions and then they get this kind of Russian equivalent is in their mind. So yeah, there are some tasks in the student's book, like for example, find all the gerunds in the text, right? Or find
Yeah.
all the phrasal verbs, or circle them, or highlight them, or something. Yes, let's look at the structure, like are they separable, inseparable? Yes, like are they 2-part, 3-part, and so on. Yes, that's where you start working. You kind of draw students' attention to this language material, you know,
Mhm.
so that's how they spot it. Yes, so yeah.
Could not
Uh,
agree more. By the way, thank you for mentioning that it's not just about vocabulary. It could be
yeah,
also about grammar, noticing,
yeah.
retrieval, yeah, creative use.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Sure, right. I think this is one of the easiest, yes, so that's what this textbooks promote, right? But
Right.
they don't, well, whether they don't give anything like for retrieval or for creative use, or there is just not enough, like very little, like very few activities, yes, so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I have to come up with something else, like finding some context or finding some sentences on the internet. So that's what you do with your tweets, right? So you find this kind of context, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right.
they work in in very many ways actually. I use them for noticing, for retrieval that we'll discuss in a minute, and also creative use and even recycling. If it's noticing, if I want to make sure that the student sees a certain phrase in a particular context, what I do is I usually think of a good example to use and I visualize it. Like if it's like a one-on-one class, I make sure that I tailor a question to a person's life. Yeah. Or I would use a simple phrase and then use an idiom or a phrase that I want them to notice. For example, I could say, it's pretty dark out here, quite gloomy, right? And then I'm looking at the sky, like quite gloomy today, right? And then like gloomy, you see, so it means it's dark, yeah?
Mhm.
So that's one of the things I might kind of do. With tweets, if it's like B2, because I'm kind of mostly working with it, B2, C1, C2, what I would do is I would find different context with the same word and I would ask them to detect it because
Mm.
I kind of know that they might not know this, you see?
Mhm.
So that's what I also do. How about, by the way, grammar? How do you make them notice grammar? Besides gerunds, as you mentioned, and everything, do you always start with like, look at the sentence, think of a grammar structure we're going to work on today?
No, of course not. Yes, so for example, if you talk about this, oh, the first thing that came to mind, like construction used to, yes, like, okay, we get that it was in the past, yes, but then I start asking, like, what do you think if the person does this thing right now, yes, or if they're like into this activity these days or not, yes, so that's, again, I keep asking questions, yes, and that's how they
Mhm,
start realizing that actually, like, how this construction works, yes, of course, it's not like,
mhm.
okay, we're going to talk about like used to today, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
because when you kind of announce this topic, yes, it might just put off the students, no, like put them off greatly, yes, and they're like, when they think about grammar, they're like, oh no, it's so boring again, not grammar again,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, exactly.
right. But well, usually, well, when we talk about textbooks, yes, the grammar is presented through this guided discovery. So we have this listening or reading exercise, right? And then we have to kind of take some examples, some sentences from that, and like discuss them. Yeah. Well, that's so in this respect, I usually follow textbooks. Just again, if the audios are interesting. If not, I
Hmm.
tend to read something myself. But again, something which is going to be linked with this activity, you know, like with this grammar presentation or with this grammar which we're going to talk about further on. Yes, like present continuous versus present simple. Yes, like if we do
Right.
this every day or right now, or is it about future, or, but again, there are so many aspects, yes, and you cannot just bombard your students with all of them at the same time. Yes, you have to be like, you have to select, yes, like be selective, yeah, when we talk about like lower level students, yes. So yeah, I also do that through the context. So yeah, say so.
Yeah. You see, that's what we need teachers for. That's why in the previous live stream when I talked about like a teacher's role and that it's important for a teacher to choose the materials. You see, you just prove this fact. Because when you take one textbook and the material is not enough and you want to spice it up a bit, and then the administration says no, it's weird. Right?
Mhm.
How come? What is my role in the classroom? Why am I here? Right? Also, we have a comment. Is it a pipe dream to contain all language aspects in one lessons? Good question. Because during our teaching classes, I was beaten into this line, and it's always in my mind. So I think he's trying to say that like, do we always have to practice all the language aspects in one lesson, like speaking, writing, reading? Is that what you kind of do, Anastasia? Like,
Well,
what? We're gonna read, then we're gonna listen, then we're gonna speak, then we're gonna write, then we're gonna have I don't know, spelling test.
mm. No, I usually have something, well, not all of them, of course. If I go for speaking, then we don't do writing, right? Or if we do writing, then we focus on writing. Yes, we have this modal. Yes, we spot all the necessary cliches if there are some, right? Or we look at the paragraphing, yes, or structure, and that's what we do. Yeah, because yeah, I see what the what you mean, like the students can also get swamped, yes, with all this information, and it's really difficult to focus on like everything, right? So well, I think maybe this is some kind of a CELTA approach where we have to follow the particular frames, yes, like for example, presentation, practice, production, or this guided discovery, which implies that we're going to have some kind of a text, right, reading. But since this is not a skill lesson, and you, for example, it's like language lesson, yes, you have to teach grammar, so then don't waste your time on reading, like just read it and then move on to this like core of the lesson, right? Because I had such an experience. I observed my colleagues, like my peer, like trainees, right? And yeah, that's what they did. So they kind of used this text, text, yes, and they started like working with the vocabulary, like trying to make students make some sentences, whatever, right? Trying to find synonyms, but that's not the point. Yes, you have to focus on something particular, right? So that's when you set the goals for the lesson, right? You have to understand clearly, like if it's a speaking lesson, then focus on speaking. Of course, you have to use some supplementary materials like listening, right? So you can make them listen to something to get the idea how they can improve their speaking probably, or so they could get the structures which they will probably need later, right? But yeah, I would still go for that, like set clear goals and then follow them in the lesson.
Yeah, I'll second that. And I think it's best if you like probably have all of those aspects, but you again follow one goal. Like I want to make sure that I go through each and every stage, the ones we're talking about, with the same phrases through reading, writing, listening, and speaking, so that at the end of the class, my students at least have an idea of the phrases and they stick to them for a while. Yeah, so then I could retrieve them in the next class. Right? It's not like, let's read a bit about something. Let's write a bit about something. You know, let's blah, blah, blah. You see? So that's what matters, okay? So, by the way, let's move on. Speaking of noticing, one more thing which is important to notice, while you might want to think of some other activities, Anastasia, is that, for example, when it comes to creating course book, because I got questions about that too for both of us, what I do is, how do I make students notice the vocabulary? For example, I assign an episode for home viewing, yeah? And then I create, and it does take a lot of time, guys, because how come can we not waste time on it, yeah? And spend time on it. And then I create this scenes compilation with the active vocabulary, yeah? From the very episode to make sure that students, after watching the TV series, watch this scenes compilation, yeah? And notice the phrases that we're going to talk about in class. Then we have a vocabulary table with the same vocabulary, okay, in the PDF, with context taken out of those scenes. But now it's not the expansive example, yeah, it's like a narrow one. They need to make sure that they understand the meaning of the phrase, or they need to look it up because they have this kind of spare column for it. And then in class, we start breaking down each and every phrase, and I know for sure that they at least watched and saw this vocabulary once or twice. You see? And that helps a lot with noticing. I kind of noticed that in lessons to come, they start exploring their own vocabulary and they say to me, Stan, I actually noticed this phrase and that phrase as well, apart from what you decided to cherry pick. See? I think it's also a good idea.
That's how you encourage them to do that themselves.
Yeah. My point is, when we don't need to spoon feed vocabulary all the time, we also need to make sure that they know their way around detecting this vocabulary. Okay?
Yeah, I see the point, right? But okay, I might say that not every student is ready to, you know, like to dive deep into it, right? Again, probably depends on the level, yeah, because I know that some of my students, they feel kind of, you know, like hasty probably, or I cannot force them, you know, like to pay attention to the vocabulary or to phrases or to grammar when they do some homework, right? Or when I assign them with some videos to watch, you know. But of course I ask, like, if there's something new you learned. Probably this is the problem on my side. Yes, I should be more encouraging, yes, in this respect.
Oh, it depends. I'm sure that the onus is not on you, but also on the students, because you know what? Sometimes students are not motivated enough, and they think that if they come to you being that good of a teacher, yeah, with certificates, with trainings, with a lot of expertise, with knowledge, yeah, and a lot of years under your belt, they think that you're like the panacea, you're the silver bullet, like I will hit the goal, right? But it's wrong. You know, you can study with anybody, with a native speaker or whoever, but if you lack self-discipline, if you think you have no time for that, sorry, language is not going to learn itself.
Yeah.
Okay? Language does not care whether you have time, perseverance, a good memory, or whatever. Language needs to be learned and taught. Okay? So that's what I say to my students. I'm always kind of a straight shooter. You know, I never choose words when it comes to motivating. Yeah, I always have 10-minute shrink session. What do you mean, like shrink session? Like, are you talking to a psychologist, Artem, or what? Maybe that's a good idea, by the way, these days. No one denies that. All right, that brings us to the next stage, retrieval. What do you know about that? How do you go about that, Anastasia? The next stage of learning vocab and grammar, retrieval.
So retrieval is like when you find, or yeah, when you come across the words, the vocabulary, target vocabulary, right, in some like other context, as far as I understand, right? So that's what I tell my students, like the more you read, the more you watch and listen, the more likely you are to find the words that you've like already seen somewhere in the students book.
Yeah.
That's actually what I've noticed even when I study something myself, right? For example, with your videos, yes, there was this video about pedestrian, yes, which is kind of like common when we talk about people who walk this somewhere on pavement, right, along the pavement, right? But I've never come across the meaning of like mundane, yes, or like basic, yeah. But when I watched your video and I started rewatching some TV series, it was The Witcher, if I'm not mistaken, yes,
Yeah.
I noticed that this meaning, yes, that's exactly, and now I know it, yes, and I can use it also, right? But again, it's not enough to find it like once or twice, yeah. But there, if I'm not mistaken, there are some particular numbers. Yes, for reading, it might work if you come across this word like twice, and if we talk about listening, about 5 or 6 times. Yeah. So the thing is that the more you listen, the more you hear the words, the more likely you are to remember it, right? So retrieval is about remembering the word, right, in different contexts.
Yes. The one that you noticed, exactly. You took it right out of my mouth. So I would say that retrieval is the second stage of learning both vocabulary and grammar. In my book, they go like in one arm, yeah, like as we say, they go in hand, right? And to me, it's like the same. That's why it didn't even mention grammar at first. And you teach the students the new phrases, yeah, you have them notice it by many different techniques that we talked about, yeah, using them. And then in the next class, you try to make sure that they understand the word that they learned, yeah, by asking questions, by having them read a text where this word is presented, as you mentioned, or by just kind of helping them create this language exposure where they watch a movie, as you did, Anastasia, yeah, and you're like, oh, I think it's that phrase, I think it's that meaning, pedestrian, oh, right, correct, see? So, and then you try to like retrieve it out of your mind, because retrieve means you can retrieve water, you can retrieve some memories. It's like воспоминание о слове, right? Kinda, because there's no Russian term for that, I think, right? In the Russian methodology, yeah, so to speak. What other activities would you use for retrieval, by the way? How would you retrieve vocabulary?
Well, I would say that I prepare some more context, like I use, well, usually I find some examples in the dictionaries and I add them to, you know, you probably don't use such websites or tools. Like I really like using WordWall, for example, or learning apps, yeah, because they kind of spice up lessons, yes, make them more creative. And yeah, I tend to leave the sentence gapped, for example, right? And that's how they start remembering which word can fit the gap here, right? And or sometimes, well, we can discuss the meanings, you know, when, for example, when we talked about phrasal verbs with my teenage students, yes, I prepared some meanings and then some examples, and that's how I remembered the word which could fit the gap, you know, well, if I get the idea right, yes.
Yeah, that's true. So you take them out, yeah, of the context, then you create this kind of vocab table and the sentences are there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we can just take a look at some Instagram posts, like for example, one of my students really likes Kylie Jenner and all these
Mm-hmm.
influencers, right? So I think it kind of caters to her needs to follow these celebrities, right? And I also prepared something, and well, on different stages, including noticing and then retrieval, right? So I can also gap some sentences and ask her to remember, yes, like what was there, yes, or what could fit the gap, yes. So yeah.
Oh gosh, it's like, it's like one mind is talking because I'm doing the same. I mean, talk about a teacher who really wants to teach, right?
That's actually what I learned from you. Yes, I don't usually work with tweets. Yes, but I thought that, well, my students don't use tweets, right? They don't post anything, they don't
Yeah,
read,
yeah,
but
sure.
everyone is using Instagram these days, right? So that's why, yeah, you are my inspiration. Yes.
Thank you. I mean, everyone would use Instagram too if they had this search box. They don't have it for the vocabulary that we want to like look for. So all we can do is if we know who they like look up to, like Kylie Jenner, as you mentioned, then you go Kylie Jenner vocabulary hunting, yeah? And you're trying to make sure that something sticks, right? That's a good one. I asked to continue the sentence when we do phrasal verbs. Yeah, that's a good one. It's like, for example, if I teach them the phrase "ride out," which means manage to survive a difficult period of time, I would probably say, yeah, I know it's hard week and it's quite difficult to write it, and then
Hmm.
I stop, and then the students, if they remember, they will say out. I'm like, yep, okay.
Hmm.
If it's a bigger chunk, for sure, I would like say the first part or the last part.
Hmm.
What I would also do is definitely, again, tweets. You can gap sentences. You can easily find them. You go to Twitter, you find the top right search box, you write your phrase in brackets, and there you go. You have so many contexts. And by the way, there is also one more interesting thing. If you leave the page for like 10, 15 minutes, you can even see how frequent the phrase is because new contexts reappear, and pop up. And it'll be like, wow, a lot of people wrote using that phrase.
Hmm.
Also, by the way, I like nudging students to use the word by asking a particular question. I'm like, for example, it looks like the week is quite difficult, right? So how are you managing with all of this? And they kind of understand that I'm asking them the question with the phrase "write out" because I taught them this phrase, yeah? And they're like, yeah, I know, it's kind of hard to write it out, but I'm trying. See?
Hmm.
So that's a good one. One more technique that I use, for example, is that I use this vocabulary in my speech, and it's also part of the retrieval part, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
because they hear it and they recognize it, and by their body language, I see that they understand me. You see.
Hmm.
Any
Right.
other ideas, Anastasia?
Oh, I just saw this message about phrasal verbs yesterday. Just dawned on me that I actually, well, during this stage of noticing, I even sometimes I bring this dictionary entries, or I ask the students to Google the definitions of the
Mm-hmm.
phrasal verbs themselves and pay attention to the context there, so we could focus on collocation, and then we work with the spider webs. Like for
Oh
example.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, dear, like to live up, yes, to live up to expectation, yes, to live up to someone's hopes, yes, to live up to hype, yes. There was even such a collocation, yes. And then next time, when we kind of retrieve this vocabulary, yes, I tend to use some of the meanings, yes, not all of them, of course, yes. And what is important to mention is that it's better to space up, like not to do everything like every day or every lesson. Yes, you have to still have some gaps,
Mm-hmm.
real, like within some time. Like for example, of course, I can deal with that like the next lesson, right? But then I just leave it, let the students kind of get it, like perceive it, yes, probably, right, to think about it, right? And maybe in 2 weeks I bring some examples or some gap sentences again, so they could remember it clearly, yes. So yeah, it doesn't work like that, because I noticed that teachers tend to like bombard students with grammar activities,
Mm-hmm.
or like again lexical or vocabulary exercises like every lesson during the unit, like for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks, and then nothing, like,
Yeah.
okay, it's
Next
gone.
topic.
Let's go, right? Yeah, so that's what's also like what's worth mentioning, right? That's what we
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Could not agree more. Spaced repetition rocks for sure. You know, it's like you throw it out there, you let it marinate. Yeah, is could be the
Yeah.
word. Yeah, and then you know, time kind of passes by, and you ask the student a question or anything, or even you ask for an English equivalent. You're like, guys, пережить, write it out.
Mhm.
Yeah, you see,
Yeah.
and they say that nothing is wrong with Russian in the classroom. Come on,
Yeah,
right? Sometimes it works wonders if you just use it appropriately. Yeah. By the way, also we have a question like, what will you do if you don't know the word? I think it's about like actually really curious students, yeah, who are like trying to also bombard us with phrases. What do you do with that, by the way, Anastasia?
Well, previously I used to be like very ashamed of not knowing
Right.
something, but now I feel perfectly fine with it. I can say like, okay, guys, to be honest, I don't remember, yes, or to be honest, I have no idea, but let's just check out the dictionary or something else, yes, like let's learn it together, yes, and thank you for like letting me know something new, right? It's amazing because it's not only like I am the boss here, yes, and you do what I tell you, right? But we're just kind of we're the same, yeah. So I learn something from you, and you learn something from me, right? So it's okay for me.
Mhm. I get that. Yeah, even though Artyom says it wasn't exactly the question, but still, I think it's a good one to answer too. Artyom, specify then. You know what? I actually enjoy it. You know, I don't have a fear of not knowing, and I have such strong students that will teach me phrases, you know?
Hmm.
And when we talk, I'm like, I'll take it on board. I need to look it up into the class, or I need to ask them what they mean by that, or wow, good, I actually knew this, but I never used it myself. So for me, it's like, you know, it's like I'm learning something else from a class, and that's what I enjoy. I try to
Hmm.
make sure that I learn also, you know, even with those tweets or whatever. So to me, that matters a lot. By the way, I think it's also important to mention, if we come back to the retrievals part, yeah, of this cycle, that of course Quizlet flashcards work wonders as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
How do you organize them? Because I have my own way of organizing those sets and modules.
Well, yeah, I saw some videos, yes, on Instagram. As for me, I tried to, like I know that it's better when you have this context, like one side of the card contains the
Yeah.
word of the phrase,
Sure.
this, and another one has this
Mhm.
meaning in English, probably like from the monolingual dictionary, yes, and the context, yeah. However, yes, I will not lie to you. Yes, if I talk about, for example, children or teenagers, right, who I also teach, I have to use translation and then probably the picture, like to make it clear if I can find this visual representation. Yeah. If to talk about students of higher levels, for example, B1, yes, I also try to include this kind of context, like where you can use this particular word or this particular phrase, even
Mhm.
leaving the first letter, just as a
Yeah,
hint.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I do. And I really like this feature in Quizlet that you can actually combine several modules, right? And you can kind of create this kind of test, yes, maybe, right? Or you can just work with several modules, right, to revise again, right? And it doesn't require you much preparation. And also you can copy all these sets, right? And you can
Right.
like refer them easily to like WordWall or to Jamboard if it's necessary, like, or to learning apps again, right? If you want to create something else, like so.
And learning apps is the name, right? It's not like
Yeah, yeah,
different
that's
learning. So that's why I kind of, yeah, quoted it. Agree. You know what? As for combining, a lot of you probably don't know about that, but when you study like a few sets and you want to make sure that it gets recycled, you just combine them together. And then you can also create this gap filling activity on your own. You can screenshot the screen, then go to Paint, and you can get those senses. You know, it's also part of the things that I do. So it's like, yeah, Quizlet is God's blessing. Yeah, for sure. What the way I do this with like C1 and C2, because we also need this mechanical work. Yeah, let's put it that way. Is that like we have two columns. The first column is this like vivid example, like it's supposed to be short, but the second column is the same example with a gapped phrase, part of the phrase of phrase, and in brackets we have the definition. You know, so what they do is they only use the карточки modes, the cards themselves,
Mhm.
and they just flip them as if they were to flip those, written cards, because
Oh, yeah.
they have no time for that. They say to me, listen, it will take me so much time to write down each and every and make those cards and laminate them, you know? So they like it. And then in the lesson, I sometimes start with this activity. Like I would dedicate like 5-10 minutes, but I would make sure that those C1, C2 students also provide me with a few alternatives, examples. Maybe they will answer a question or think of something else to say. You know, it's not just this mechanical revision for the sake of revision. Okay.
Yeah,
So that.
I have a question to you, like
Sure.
concerning modules. Yes, so recently I've come across such a point of view that if you create Quizlet modules for your students, you're kind of spoon feed them, you know, especially high levels. Yeah, and I cannot say that I agree. Maybe to some extent, yeah, like. Probably it's kind of their part of job, yes, to notice something, to write that down, yes, because they have to learn it, because like we know that, yeah. But
Yeah.
still, I think that well, so what I wanted to say, like, if you agree with this point of view that creating Quizlet module can like block or maybe discourage students from learning language themselves, or from being more attentive, or from noticing more, what do you think?
So you mean that we are supposed to have them create their
Yeah,
quiz sets?
that's what I found, yes, recently. So what do you think?
That's a double-edged sword for me. That's my vice. I always create Quizlet sets for my students. I do spend time on it because I believe that it's like my philosophy, but at the same time flawed philosophy. Why do I do this? Because I want to make sure that each and every Quizlet set is qualitative in terms of a vivid example, you know, also in terms of it being succinct. I don't want it to be like a lecture, you know, in one part of the module. And also I want to make sure that it makes it more convenient for us to like revise it or retrieve it in the lesson, you see? So
Yeah.
that's why I do them myself, but it does take a lot of time. However, the silver lining is, like, you know, time after time, when you come back to these Quizlet sets, you can also use it for other purposes, your own purposes, you know, you can, again, combine them. They will be in the same format, in the same design. But I know what you mean. We kind of jip them out of the noticing part, yeah, by the way,
Yeah.
of the vocabulary cycle. By the way, guys, let us know, those watching and watching in the recording, whether you use a lot of Quizlet and how you use it, okay? If you use it, just leave a plus for us. If you don't, minus. So yeah. By the way, so do you still create Quizlet sets for your students?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, of course. Well, my Artem was writing something like, "My students are lazy to do." Yeah, my students are also lazy, you know. And what is more, they're even lazy to learn this module. Sometimes, again, it depends on the person, you know. And I think it depends on their motivation. If they're like really motivated to study, yes, to move on, like to progress, so then yes, they do that. Yeah. But sometimes I have to even remind some of them, like, okay. I saw that you haven't done anything, like have you learned anything? But then sometimes I can just even make a question or ask a question connected with like the vocabulary, right? And they see immediately that they haven't learned anything. But again, I tell them, okay, this is your responsibility, because I cannot just take all these words and construction and put them in your head. You know, it doesn't work like that. Just so.
For sure, for sure. We're getting the pluses, by the way, and minuses. Alona Kichai is with us. Wow, Alona, you're one of the experts on creative teaching. I'm really honored to have you here as a guest too. Please have your say. If you have something to add, please do. Also, grilling them if they haven't learned it. Yeah, grilling, like asking questions like, why didn't you do it? Yeah. You know what? I really think that it's important before we start the course or a class to make sure a student is on the same page and wavelength with us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they really think that coming to us means results, but it's wrong, unfortunately, right? I mean, I've had students with amazing results and terrible results, okay? And it doesn't talk much about me as a teacher, but mostly about them too, because they didn't put in the hard work. Since I put in the hard work all the time, I have the same approach in terms of my passion, you know, for each and every student. I always meet their demands. If something doesn't work, it means it's a shared responsibility. I believe that this is like 100% true. That's why I never like get frustrated if something goes sideways, you know, with the students. I'm like, listen, let's try to just put in the more hard work, be more aware. Just like, you know what, find 15 minutes to review the things. Everything is done for you. Yeah, like everything. Just
Mm-hmm.
put in the hard work is all, and it will pay off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You see, like, how dare you? I also want to play Minecraft, students say, yeah. Well, yeah, with teenagers, it's a bit of a different thing. Yeah, I mean, they should be nudged, encouraged, sometimes imposed ideas on, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way, we have this question about teenagers. Yes, like
Yeah, let's do it.
textbooks can put off students from learning a language, and would a textbook-free approach work for teenagers?
It would, definitely. I tried it. I tried it. But again, what is the main problem with the textbook free approach is that, first of all, your English has to be really good by default. I mean, in
Mm-hmm.
teaching language, because expect a lot of questions, expect a lot of intricacies, expect curveballs, you know, those surprising moments, expect a lot of preparation, which we don't want to do, yeah, because we're busy, yeah, we have families or we have loved ones or kids. But at the same time, it also requires a very good understanding of where to go, yeah, what to take with you, what to get rid of in terms of tools. I mean, yeah, so it requires a lot of thinking, it requires expertise, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not an overstatement, by the way. So if you know how to go about that, you can do that. But it also requires a lot of passion on both sides. I know this is cliche, what I'm talking about, but it is what it is. I mean,
Oh,
there's no
yeah,
kind of, yeah, you
it
know,
works.
for sure. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think, by the way? Would you ever try to go full textbook free with teens, Anastasia, if you had time?
Well, yeah, I think I would love to try is to choose something that is like that's really interesting for them,
Hmm.
something that appeals to them. Well, maybe some of them will share my love for music because I'm really into this British singers, American singers, right? So, and probably one day I'll create something like a course on songs, like something. Yeah,
Good
uh,
luck.
yeah, that's one of my dreams. Yeah, yeah, I would try that. To be honest, I've never tried doing this free, like textbook free approach, like text to go textbook free, yeah, with teenagers or with no, I think with teenagers only, yeah, because I worked with adults and we had this traveling course, and I worked with young learners where I used to like create everything myself. Yeah. As for the students' book, I agree that to some extent they can put off teenagers from learning languages, but
Mhm.
again, it depends on the book. Because if we talk about some school textbooks like Rainbow English, okay, I might be mistaken, yeah, but the books, at least what I had at school,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah.
Quizlet at school, if you know
I
this.
had the same. Can you believe
Yeah.
that? Kuzovlev, gosh.
Yes, right. And I know that they still have it at some schools. And this is insane, really, because this book is, it's like, it's not beautiful even, you know, it's, you don't want to take it and, you know, like look through because nothing like catches your eye, if you see what I mean, right? And if we talk about some British books or American ones, yeah, they are full of pictures. It's just interesting to look, yes, to stare, to find some details, yes. So again, I think it depends on the edition again, right? I
Exactly.
personally really love this National Geographic books because they're
Hmm.
they're amazing. The pictures are just wow, really. I can't express this how I'm just in love with them. So again, yeah.
National Geographic is awesome because what I like about these textbooks, and again, don't get me wrong, I actually know my way around textbooks. I know what textbooks exist, right? So it's not like I'm like in my own bubble, right? So National Geographic textbooks are great because they pursue a discovery and exploration goal. So it's not language for the sake of the language or a language for being able to discuss life routine, city life, or whatever. It's learning via the language. That's what I kind of live by, you know, in my teaching profession. So I couldn't but agree for sure. As for Kuzovli, by the way, talk about noticing and retrieval stages. Do you remember those huge lists of vocabulary at the end of each unit? Yeah,
Yes,
like
and I
no
used to
defi-
learn them. I used to learn them by heart. It was a
yeah,
good
yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, no definitions, no at least some sort of equivalence, no any additional work, whatever. Really, it was like you know, it's like Arakan, you know, it's like you
Mhm.
come, you learn, and you have to be super duper pumped, you know, about language to persevere. But we still learned, you see, it's all about
Somehow, yes. I don't know how, yes, but
Anyways, to continue and also follow up your questions, guys, let's talk about the next stage of learning vocabulary, which would be probably creative use. And by the way, please let us know whether you agree with any of our ideas, okay? Because I know that no news is good news, yeah, like silence. But if you have a bone to pick with us, or if you disagree, or if you agree, just let us know. If you agree with the philosophy, just leave a thumbs up or a plus, okay? And we'll continue. Now, the next stage, I think, is creative use. And guys, it's not about being creative with phrases. It's not about writing creative stories. No, it's about making sure that when you come across a new word during the noticing stage or retrieval stage, you see that it changes in a way. Like maybe a different type of syntax is attached, right? Or maybe the word has a different meaning. Yeah. Or maybe like pedestrian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, pedestrian, right? Or maybe a word is like, you know, embedded into this beautiful chunk, like when the one I mentioned with gets used to. Remember, like it takes a bit of getting used to. It's creative use, right? So now, can't but agree with what you say. Who might you be if you don't agree? Joe, I like your intricate wordings. What do you mean by that? You confuse me a little bit. So creative use is not about that. It's learning more about the same word or phrase. How do you go about that, Anastasia? How do you
Mm-hmm.
make sure that they learn the same word in different contexts?
Well, I'm not sure that it is the stage, yeah, but still, I ask them to produce the sentences using these collocations or using these phrases, or I ask them to make questions containing these phrases. This is one of the like low prep activity, I would say. Yeah, I don't know why, but I have this like phrasal verb activities going on my mind. That's what I asked my students to do after we've learned everything. I asked them to write some sentences and, well, kind of ask me to paraphrase them using the phrasal verbs in them. Yeah, so for example, one of the questions one of my students came up with was like, do you have good relationships with your students? And I'm like, okay, have good relationships, like, do you get on well with your students? And he was like, yeah, that's what I meant, yes. And then I could just ask him or her, like, and do you get on with your classmates, or you get on with your teachers, right? Or sometimes I ask them to make this get sentences for myself, or I use this Play English website, or what was there, like, I just don't
Oh,
remember
I don't
exactly.
know.
Play phrase, yeah.
Oh, play phrasing.
Yeah, you have to pay. I pay, actually, yes, and I
Oh,
have access to all the videos excerpts, yes, with these phrases, right? And I even find some of them connected or containing these like words or phrases, and ask them to listen to, pay attention to the vocabulary again, right? To see the collocation. Yes, if necessary, we can re-listen to it like several times, right? And then again, I ask them to make the stories or something else, or to tell about their like family or friends, whatever. Like, I don't know if it works as a creative use stage or not.
sure, it sure does. It's one of it's like the epitome of it, for sure, for sure. Because what I also do is, it just came to me, when I go to Youglish, I like Youglish a lot because of those
Mm-hmm.
different registers, which you perfectly know about, all of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you sign up, by the way, are you signed up on Youglish? Did you?
Maybe.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can actually add those example into your own local library of examples on
Mm-hmm.
Youglish too. So
Mm-hmm.
what you do is, what I do sometimes is, especially for my course books, I like accumulate a list, not a list, it's like a library of examples with the same phrase from Youglish. And then in the lesson, I open all of them at once, like the cherry-picked examples, the ones that I make sure to explain, you know, and kind of drive home to my students, as they say in English, right? So this is a good thing. I actually discovered it maybe like a month ago or so, when I started creating a new course book on humans of New York, you know? I was like, wow, so you can actually save them and like keep them and then like reuse them and come back to them, then download them, you know? So this
Mm-hmm.
is like cool. What I also do, by the way, I sometimes go overboard with that. So I start like screen capturing those, you know, context then I stick them, in the movie maker, and I create either a listening task based on the same phrases that we have learned, like noticing, retrieval stages are done, yeah, the creative use, and they either do a listening task with questions, okay, or no questions, like for the gist, and then I ask them to transcribe it at home. It's just a
Okay.
1 minute video, 1 minute. It's not much, it's like maybe 15 sentences. And they will notice that the same phrase is used in a different context. For example, recently, I stumbled upon a context where it was like, we learned the word right out, yeah? Again, the phrasal verb. And then, yeah, you will remember it by the end of the live stream. And then I found a context where a person was talking about how they loved New York. And they said that, okay, New York, let's write out the next couple of days and see how beautiful you are. And my students learned that not only can it mean like manage to survive a difficult period of time, but also just live and see. Like when we say wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were like, oh, good. So it's not just about like a negative connotation. So transcribing helps a lot, and also listening tests based on English, play phrasing. By the way, what other sources would you recommend for context discovery?
Well, I also use like play phrase English and Instagram, maybe some tweets, but again, that's not what I usually use. Yeah. And well, I use dictionaries. Yes, I know that it might be kind of outdated. Yeah, but still, yeah.
But you get to decide which
Well,
one.
yeah, yeah. Also, I
So,
create something myself. Yeah. If to talk about phrasal verbs again, yes. Just okay, it can be just like off topic, but
fine.
I teach students using teenagers, yes, using solutions, and particularly solutions intermediate. Maybe you've heard about this book.
Yeah,
They have this section which is called word skills, and the thing
right.
is that the problem with that section is that they just overload the students with like lots of vocabulary, for example, phrasal verbs, yeah, and then just there are no activities, no exercises on how to work. They don't even provide any extra like worksheets or whatever, right? Okay, so they ask me how I find context
Yeah.
on Instagram. I bought a set of cards on well, can I advertise?
Sure, fine.
So there is this blogger, Anna, so it's teaching and learning tips. Yeah, so she sells this cards with Instagram posts, and you can always highlight something there. This is the really good selection of materials. So you can work with like different topics like fashion or food or places, whatever, right? And you can always underline something, and well, I know it's not a very good idea to scan them, yes, but still, yeah. So you can try to find them, at least if you try to enter this the name of the profile, because they were taken from the real Instagram profiles. Yes, so that's the thing.
Oh, good. Wow.
But I have them just in another room, unfortunately. Yes, but I can share the information if you need that. Yes, so there is also there are plenty of things to look at. Yes, and I think that can be quite helpful, yeah, in terms of learning something new. Yeah.
Mm.
I sometimes, when I look through, when I scroll the feed, yes, I can come up with something interesting. Yes, why not to use that? Yeah, again, it depends. It's like really depends on the situation. It's not like I spend like my whole day just looking for the word. Okay.
But still, spending some time, sometimes we forget that when we are getting ready for a class, we're also putting in the hard work as a teacher. We're learning, we understand even the meaning of the word better, yeah, in those contexts. So sometimes it's okay. Yeah, Artem, you can't just put it down into the search bar because you can only find like profiles or whatever. So it's not available in Russia for us to search for keywords, you see, unfortunately. That's why we use Twitter. But with those posts and that girl, wow, that is cool. That's a good thing. So she created a treasure trove of examples, yeah, from Instagram, right? So some script or program. No, unfortunately not. You see, no silver lining, no silver bullets, yeah. But silver lining, there are some other good resources. By the way, do you use Google Books? By the way, guys, who knows about Google Books? Let us know. Just leave a plus. Google Books for like context searching.
No, I haven't heard about it until you told me.
Well,
So
that's a
that.
good one in terms of, you know what I do is I go to Google Books, or no, another good one with Google Books embedded. You go to Ngram Viewer. There's this website, guys. It's so underrated and over. Give me a moment. Ngram Viewer. So it's so underrated, you know, this one. It's based on like a huge, I don't know how to even call this, mother load of examples from Google Books, both neutral English, informal English, bookish English even. And what you do is when you use this one, Ngram Viewer, it takes you to the website with a graph, you know, this graphic. So you
Mhm.
type a word, a phrase or two, or even more, and it gives you the frequency of the phrase, you know, out of those huge treasure troves of information. And then, besides looking at the frequency of the phrases, yeah, you can see the years of publishing those books where the phrases are used. You click them, and you see those examples in expansive contexts, you see? So you click there, you can take screenshots, you can see the full context, you can use the book even. Like you can open and read the book with this example. It will show you all the examples possible with the same word or phrase. But again, what I like using it for is that sometimes if I'm unsure of some sort of preposition or whether this or that phrase is more frequent in books, what I do is I type, for example, mount a bike, mount on a bike, get on the bike, you know, and then I see which one is the most frequent and why. And I sometimes even share them in class, and we start like elaborating, like why. Why do you think it's used like that? Yeah. Or for example, confident of, confident about something, confident with something. It actually has different meanings if you use a different preposition. So you start looking like in what context it can be realized. Like, does that really mean that if you're confident of yourself, it means уверен в себе? See?
Mhm.
So you start searching. It's really cool, you know, and I've been using it for a long time.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, I know some guys are joining and just leaving. It's fine because the time is not exactly appropriate. We know that everyone watches the recording, so thank you for thank you to those who are staying with us, of course. But still, now that brings us to the next stage, yeah, which is I think vocab depth.
Mhm.
Shall I explain or will you explain it?
Well, I think, um, well, if we talk about vocab depth, I think it's like you can find out different meanings, right? Or the environment in which the words are used, right? So which prepositions are followed by that, or some grammar like patterns, like verb patterns, probably, right? If I get the idea right, yeah.
You're
So.
close, very close. I would say, again, to remind you, noticing, we notice a phrase.
Mhm.
I mean, you guys, yeah, retrieval, we're trying to remember the phrase we learned. Then, creative use, we're trying to learn more context, making sure that we learn more about the same word. And then vocab depth is still learning, but I would say where you are using the phrase yourself, you know, and the teacher or anybody else reacts. So they
Mhm.
try to make sure you are, as a teacher, trying to make sure that the word or phrase is used correctly. Yeah, they got it right. That so it's like, you know, I would say my way of looking at that is that vocab depth is all about how far you can go with the word. You're trying like to tread waters, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and this is the most difficult stage, right? Because
Mhm.
you need to talk, you need to speak. Yeah. So
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about like what do you think about A1, A2, and B1 levels, for example? Should we go that deep? Well, for example, when we talk about A1 level students or A2 level students, because yeah, I know that words have lots of meanings, yeah, and to some students there might be a revelation like that some nouns are used as verbs or vice versa, yeah, and they might get like taken aback by the fact, yes, but I think it works perfectly fine for well, it's necessary, yes, it's a must for B2 B like C1 levels, yes, so yeah, the higher the level the more you have to be into the language, right? But what do you think, is there some kind of an approach which kind of not well, kind of protect students from knowing too much, because so it can be mind-blowing for them, right?
I know, you're right. I would agree with you. Teaching all the meanings of the same word to A1 is not a good idea. Just think about that. So you're introduced to a word, yeah? You see the visual form of it. Then you have to learn the pronunciation and at least one meaning, and then you have to make sense of it in a sentence. And then a teacher starts telling you, okay, the word jam. So it means варенье, then it means, I don't know what, не открываться, then it means пробки, then it means, I don't know, like in a sci-fi movie when someone like jams a knife in you, or then whatever, and there's just like, wow, okay, you're an expert, I can see that, but how come can I learn that, right? So for sure, it's a bad idea. I think it's better than we focus on one word in one meaning, but we still go through the same stages we're talking about with one word and one meaning. I sometimes, of course, with adult students, joke and say that, I say it in Russian, I say, guys, if you want to make sure that word is yours and that you're like friends with them, okay, not friends, partners with them, I say, вам нужно переспать с каждым словом. You know, like literally. You have to internalize it, yeah? Make sure you go through each and every stage with the word, you know, so that it becomes yours. Like оседлать, да? Оседлай это слово. Прям в прямом значении сядь на него как на лошадь, yeah? И тогда это слово будет твоим. You know, and we kind of start laughing, it's hilarious, it breaks the ice, but they remember that it takes so much work, you know? Yeah, hence partners. So you see, that's why I think it matters much. So yeah, I think you're doing a great job. You are not overloading them with all those meanings, right? So for sure, that's for sure. But when I was teaching translation studies at uni, I would definitely use, even with like beginner translators, this kind of approach where I would take a word and we would explore different meanings, again using tweets, you know, like jam, like the word school, because there can be a school of dolphins, you know, homeschooling, you can school a person on a particular skill, you see. Even the word piece, not only does it mean like кусочек, but also a painting on the wall, you know, or it could mean a chess piece or whatever. So that's what I would do for sure. But again, when needs be, see? So speaking of vocab depth, can you think of activities that you might use when you're trying to make sure that they use the phrase and they use it correctly?
Like, okay, making up stories doesn't work here, does it?
It does, because you have them make stories and then you correct them. You see how far they can go with the phrase.
Well, again, yes, you see, maybe I kind of confused these two stages with creative use and vocabulary depth. Yes, so when I ask my students to make some questions for me, right, or to make some gaps, or to, for example, to write a post or to kind of make a story, Instagram story, using the vocabulary. Yeah, but of course we don't do it like online, yes, but I might prepare something, you know, like
template.
Yeah, like a template, yeah, and they can write something there, because I can easily share this Google Images or Jamboard. Yes, you just send the link, they click on it, and they start working there, right? So it works like nice, yeah. Of course, I can ask them to post something on Instagram, yes, but if we talk about teenagers, they won't probably do that. Yes, the same with adults, they kind of feel shy, you know. Yeah.
Right.
But at the same time, I see how they use the words, if there are some things to be improved, yes, if they miss something like prepositions maybe, or the verb pattern is incorrect. So yeah, I can always help them with that, yes. So
yeah, story making is also good as well. Yeah, everything works. I believe in eclecticism, you know, even though maybe most of you associate me with this like textbook free approach teacher. No, I like to use the best techniques I find I see fit to use, so to say. And sometimes it could be anything that is not part of the textbook free, for sure. By the way, have you ever considered word clouds? I'm a fan of word clouds.
yeah, by the way, I even found some online, like connected, oh, for example, with Christmas topic or whatever, like a relationship, yes, or Christmas or New Year's resolution. Well, there are plenty of them on Instagram, or on the internet, right? But I also found some word cloud generators, so they're also
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but I haven't got any particular ones. I just, like Google, I found the website, first one, click on it, and then start making something, like creating something. Yeah. So can you share that? How do you use them exactly?
Oh yeah, I have one and only that I started using. It was a random choice. It's called word art. Word art. You know,
Hmm.
it's actually used for creating some, pictures on cups,
Oh.
So again, we could talk about us being creative. So, and then I decided to do the following. I cherry pick like maybe from usually 15, I will explain why so many, to 25 phrases, like chunks sometimes. And I would like enter them and create certain word clouds for, I would say, contextualizing the plot of a TV series we're discussing, or for having an on the spot monologue or conversation, like on the spot, So what I do is, again, it's user friendly. You enter the number of sentences or phrases or whatever you want to use, then you randomize them, then you can even move them around, so you can create some sort of a form or shape, by the way, if those are kids we're talking about. I print it out, or I would. Then I kind of share it on screen, and what they do is, first of all, it creates this element of success because they look at the phrases, they all know them, and they're like,
Hmm.
wait, are they the same phrases? I know them. I'm like, yeah, of course you do, because you're going to talk now using all of them. Yeah. And then I'm like, listen, we discussed an episode, or we discussed a story, or we discussed a Humans in New York video that I'm talking about. Now it's time to use the same phrases to either discuss, like, to sum it up, yeah, or to have a random conversation, like as a warm up at the beginning of the class, using those phrases. And by the way, it's important to mention that when you are in the lesson, it's okay to impose phrases upon yourself and upon your students, because it's a training mode, practice mode. Yeah. And this is where probably you might sound a bit awkward because there are too many idioms. Yeah, whatever, because you're doing this for the sake of idioms. But when they start speaking in a natural environment or with anybody else, of course, this is where production comes in place. Yeah? And you're supposed to make sure you get across the message, not the
Hmm.
phrases. You see? So, and then, yeah, we start using them. For example, again, they see this write out, yeah, or I don't know, up to the task, and they're like, you know what? I have been teaching this class today, and it looks like I'm up to the task because students are learning well. You see, so they look at the phrases and they use them. All right.
Hmm.
So I find it really cool. But at first, everyone gets frightened because, like, a lot of phrases,
Hmm.
you have to talk. You don't have a particular topic assigned, but then when they start talking, they blossom,
Hmm.
They're like, listen, I'm a master of those phrases. I am in the saddle, So that's what I
Hmm.
love about them.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. I'll take it on board. Yes, I used these word clouds, just but in a bit different way, probably. I well, since I teach individuals, I have the speaking club sessions for my
Mhm.
students. And well, recently we had this Christmas Christmas speaking club, yeah, and yeah, I also found this word cloud, and I asked them to kind of come up with some questions, probably, like even at their level, like A2, they're still able to ask some questions. Like, for example, yes, there was this Christmas tree with the word traditions, yes, or like Christmas tree, or like decorations, whatever. Yes, they can
Right.
ask, like, okay, do you have a lot of decorations at home? Oh, yes, I do. Like, what are your favorite decorations? Blah, blah, blah. So, like, even simple questions, but they still
Mhm.
kind of, you can start discussion using them. Yeah, so I think that,
Exactly.
yeah, really cool.
Exactly. Could not agree more. I also used to do it a lot with teens, And what I also do is, I just remembered, I had a projector in class. So when I created this word cloud, I would project this word cloud onto the screen. So it would be huge. And then I would call out to students with pointers or pens. And then the other part of the class would say the phrase that they see on the screen, and they would have to like point at it right away. So it's like, вдогонки, yeah?
Yeah.
And they loved it so much. And they were like, oh, no, wait, here, here. And everyone was like, yeah, yeah, go, go, go. And it's like, we killed two birds because they were
Mhm.
happy and they used them. And again,
Mhm.
those were like what, year 5, year 6, year 7, maybe. Even year 10 loved it. It was like a competition in a good way. So, and also I would do this. I would bring some sort of a timer, and I would literally check their mechanical memory, you know, in this kind of temporary memory. I would say, now I'm giving you 30 seconds. Your task is to get on stage, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and say all the phrases and words you remember associated with this topic we discussed. So the time is up, it's on the screen, everyone is like, yeah, yeah, more, more, more. And he's trying to remember or write them down on the board, and it just work wonders, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
that is also creative use and vocab depth, because
Like the brainstorming, that's the vocabulary which they've learned, right? Kind of.
they've learned, exactly. I would say it's more of a vocab depth and retrieval in a way, even, you
Mm-hmm.
know? This воспоминание слова. You know, it
Yeah.
worked because what I noticed, students at school lack memory, you know, and we need to try to nudge them to use a little bit more of their memory. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, maybe it could work too for you guys. Hopefully it's useful. Let me know if our ideas are useful, okay? Because we do need feedback for sure. And yeah, and we're getting some. Good, good. You see, so our streaming is not in vain for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I use the pictures sometimes, but again, it takes me like really a lot of time to find the pictures which I
yeah.
find appropriate, right? But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it can be quite worthy, yes. Like, yeah, when I prepare the set of pictures, like planning on like some particular uses for them, like, okay, this picture represents this word, yes, that picture represents that word, yes. But then the student starts talking or like making up a story, yes, or just telling what's going on there. He or she comes up with like absolutely different ideas, but at the same time they use the target vocabulary, you know, like
Exactly.
they,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's
Loving it.
amazing, really. Yes, you never know how it's gonna work out. Yes, like, and I really love that, this kind of unpredictability.
I love this one. I love it, unpredictability factor. You know, that's what surprises students, and that what makes them just to break out of the mold, because they're like, oh, I know what she will say. I know what she will do, you know? But then you're like, quiz time, yeah, or whatever. And they're all surprised. Loving it. Great. I love it very much. Now, we have one more stage, yeah, and then a few more questions to answer. The next stage would be probably recycling, yeah, or just
Mhm.
revision. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's not important to know those words. It's not about the words and terms. For example, Anastasia knows definitely more about teaching English because you did CELTA, you did CE, you did Take ET, and you had so much theory there. But again, it's not just about theory, it's about practice, right? It's
Mhm.
about the idea, it's about what we take away from it. So we're just saying the names to make sure you can even like imagine this cycle in your mind. Yeah. So again, besides noticing, retrieval, creative use, vocabulary depth, yeah, we have recycling, the last stage of this cycle. And here we have time. Yeah, everything needs time. Recycling, I think, is clear. It's the time when we're like, guys, it's time for a spelling test, dictation.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's time to see how much you know. It's time for the exam, right?
Mhm.
The only bone I have to pick with this one before you have your say is that usually this is what happens in the classroom. We have the noticing stage and then we have the recycling stage. We skip all of those three, right? That's the
Yeah.
what do you have to say on that?
Yeah. So that's our primarily, you know, like role. Yes, we have to provide this like intermediary stages. Yes, in order for our students not to be disappointed. Yeah. So well, when we just you know like present the vocabulary through the students book and then just check it after like a couple of lessons, yes, and then make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to you know like criticize themselves, they tend to find faults in themselves, like, okay, I'm stupid, yes, I didn't do
Yeah.
that. But it doesn't work that way. Yes, we have to help
Mm-hmm.
them, to provide them with that. Yeah. And well, personally, I don't give any dictations in the classroom. Well,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm okay if someone does that. Yeah. But I prefer some, you know, like no or low prep activities. Like, for example, we can play something like tic-tac-toe. Yes, I will ask
Oh,
the student to complete like the grid with any phrases or vocabulary like we've covered, yes, or with grammar constructions, maybe, you know, or with the verbs. And then we can just discuss them using them in the context again, right? Like something which is personalized, right?
mm-hmm.
Something that is like really close to them, something that reflects their experience, and so on and so forth. So, or maybe some board games even. I even asked my students to create word games themselves. So when I
Mm-hmm.
used to teach in the school center, or in the language center, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
brought the templates, you know, like with the empty squares, and they had to write the questions themselves, connected with topic or including some phrases. Or I even asked them to, you know, like alternate, probably, you know, like one square must contain a question, another one just a phrase, and then you work together, discuss, yes, and then yeah, I kind of listen to what they're talking about. Yes, I can check. I can then collect everything and see what they've written, if there are any mistakes, you know, in how they use that. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I do
I
usually.
like this one. Yeah,
Mhm.
I like this one. You see, so this is where we're what we're for. Yeah, the course book can be a stellar one, but it can be a stellar one when it's in the hands of a stellar teacher, right? Because it could be a Martyszka Echki, for example, is saying, yeah. Like, what do I do with that? Don't think
Mhm.
that even those books that we all consider our Bibles, yeah, like this one, the lexical grammar, that, by the way, I'll be talking about with another guest in a week after Arena about chunks. And this book, don't think that they're like a one size fits all thing too, right? They all need good hands, yeah, clear minds, a lot of awareness, a lot of expertise. I believe that teaching is like creating, you know, not because again we're like so needy. Yeah, like I need to
Mhm.
create. I'm the creative mind. Yeah, no. It's because we need that. Yeah, it's in demand. And times are changing. And trust me on this one, even though textbooks are not gonna supersede, yeah, this kind of textbook free approach or vice versa, still we'll have more students coming with special needs, yeah? I mean learning needs, and more students who will ask for certain purposes. And we're like, I teach with a course book. Yeah, that's not enough. All right. So that concludes the this kind of learning vocabulary cycle, which I actually even wrote for you, yeah, in the comment section, guys. Noticing, retrieval, creative use, vocab death, recycling. Everything needs time with each and every word. I think it's time to answer some other questions, right? Can you
Mhm.
read out the next one?
Okay, well, we stopped. Okay, so how do you create your own materials? Which logic and exercise order should be followed? I think
Oh.
this is the question to you. Like, you create your courses, right? So, is there any particular procedure for
I would
you?
say it's common sense for sure. I try not to overload my students with stuff, but again, it's too big a question to answer in detail, so I will be very succinct. First of all, I do try to make sure that needs are met, yeah, and that the material is not just studied in one lesson or two lessons. If I discuss an episode, it takes like 4 hours for us to discuss one episode. So it could be four classes or two-hour classes, you know, and I make sure that the same phrases go through that stage that we discussed with you, that we all know perfectly well, yeah, but the terms maybe, and that the order is clear in terms of grammar, vocab, and listening. I try to make sure that actually those activities help it memorize it. So I would even include the phrases that we learned from previous episodes into the questions for the new episode, like
Mm.
plot discussion, you know? Like, what do you think she was up to the task? Do you think she was able to write it out? Even though the episode is like not related to this vocabulary, you see? But I think, you know what I'm thinking? I'm kind of being benevolent, a little bit generous today. I think we will talk to you about something that we could help our students to get inspired by. Maybe we will have a giveaway session with either my materials and yours, or my materials, it doesn't really matter, where we would ask them to do a certain activity, to not just to do that, and we will give them a bit of a hint on how to, you know, create your own materials. Maybe I will, I don't know, give away one episode of This Is Us, you see,
Yeah. Mhm.
for everyone to see how it works. So we just show, yeah, and we practice what we preach. By the way, what do you think of this, guys? Leave us something, pluses, I don't know, thumbs up if you like the idea. But it will be for Instagram only, which means you can't cheat. Yeah, it won't be on VK. We will think of something really important for you to get it for free. But it really matters, and it's really cool. You will like it. Now, the next question I will read for you, okay? It says here, and I will choose, all right? Are you okay with that,
Yeah,
Anastasia?
sure.
Because there are so many of them. I will choose this one. Oh, listen. Question 6. textbook-free approach is amazing. People have started using more authentic material, but at the same time, there are a lot of textbooks based on this material. So it means anyway, we're walking on the same path. The way I understood it was, why create new materials which are authentic if more and more authors are resorting to using authentic materials?
Well, I have to talk about students' books, right? So it is still graded, yes, to some extent, right? Or even if we talk about like recordings, yes, or audios, they are being recorded in studios. Yes, you've never, well, at least that's what I've come across. I've never heard any like no authentic audios being included in the course books. Well, I'm talking about like A1, A2, B1, though there was one audio included from the radio broadcast or something. Yeah, but
Right.
it was just one, yes, just one video in the whole audio in the whole course, yeah.
Right.
Still, yeah, lots of things are being missed out, yeah, or being left out, you know. If we talk about text, again, they are being kind of simplified, right, to suit like students' needs, right? Or the topics are might be not really appealing to the students, right? Again, some of them are like parsnips, yes, which we can.
My next thing to say, yeah. Right, right.
And also, I was thinking about this. Textbooks and course books, they just get old, you know, they're getting old with
Literally, you mean literally? Yeah.
yeah, through time. Because yeah, if we open some textbooks created like in like I don't know like 2010, yes, they might seem old a bit still, right? Or for example, I used to work with Superminds for children, right? And there were this set of words connected with gadgets and you know like really old stuff like CD player, yes,
Yeah,
or
cassette.
like, oh my God, nobody uses that. Yes, there were like 10 words and maybe 3 or 4 of them are like outdated already. Yes, we don't use this stuff anymore, right? Or I still come across this like DVD players, right? Even in Speak Out, yes, even though, well, come on, we don't have them now. Yes, we can upload or download something from the internet or watch it online. So, yeah. And I guess probably that's it. Do you have something to add?
I like the way you responded to this, but I think one more thing to add, and it's not one of the parsnips to mention, I think, we need to keep in mind the fact that mostly those textbooks created by Cambridge and Oxford are the ones created by really well-versed teachers, yeah? Teachers who are in their 50s, 60s, yeah? Sometimes even 70s, which means that they speak a certain type of English, right? Like, for example, my mom is 48, all right? I'm 28, she's 48, she's very young. But at the same time, she uses a different Russian that from which I use, yeah, from what I use, which means, obviously, even though we know that we're creating textbooks for teenagers or kids, it's still, you know, our language still rubs off on the textbook, course book, yeah? Which means we have a bit of a discrepancy going on between what a real teenager or kid would say, yeah? And what someone would say who learned from this book. And we need to take it into consideration. If we create books for adults, sure, fine, works perfectly fine. But when we create books for teens, we need to at least maybe make sure that we know the language that kids use, right? Because again, from what I've noticed, a good change about textbooks these days is that they finally started incorporating some informal English, like this real life English, yeah, that we would use every day, right? And
Yeah.
also one more thing, which I noticed, and by the way, Hugh Deller would definitely second that, and it's also in this book, which I like a lot, is that he said that he feels frustrated that some of the terms and some of the vocabulary will never make it to the textbook because it doesn't meet the requirements of the publishing house. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about dirty language or, you know, like some sort of inappropriate language. I'm talking about, for example, spoken grammar, you know, when you can say, I'm not understanding. And it's perfectly fine to say that. It's not a mistake to say it. It just when you're very emotional and you want to make sure that the person understands that you're confused. Yeah? Or for example, I think he exemplified the following. There was a poster that he took a picture of. And on this poster, it read, some guy knows how to help you. Some. And we
Mm.
know that it's like spoken grammar, some guy, because we use some with, well, again, I don't have to lecture you on this one. So, and he said, like, I'm sorry that it will never make it to the books because we use it all the time. Some girl, even like handsomest, it's used. You're the handsomest person I know, a girl might say to a guy, yeah? Or beautifulest, it's used. Of course, it's kind of broken, but it's used. It's like when we
Mhm.
sometimes jokingly can say, "Sho, sho ты там?" You know, we say
Yeah.
in the Belgrade region. But again, nobody will mention that. And when kids start watching Netflix, I think they see that and they're like, why didn't my Stan or Anastasia never mention that to me? Do they teach their own English? And then suspicions creep in. And also, I liked one of the things he said, which I even wrote down, and I now start using this as some kind of mantra. Hugh Deller, quoting, he said, in the internet age, it becomes more and more unsustainable to teach things kids here contradicted on Netflix every day.
Mhm.
I will read again. In the internet age, it becomes more and more unsustainable to teach things kids here contradicted on Netflix every day, which means when we watch Netflix, or TV, whatever, we hear a bit of a different language from a course book. And kids see that because they're too smart, they're too tech savvy. You see? And we need to make sure as teachers that we're also up to speed on this, yeah? And we might want to teach something, yeah, out of
Mhm.
that domain. What was the
Mhm.
question, by the way, Nastya? Yana asks, can you repeat?
Do students' book get redundant just in, and then I lost it.
In the
So,
tech domain, yeah? In the tech domain.
yeah,
What
just
do
a
you
moment.
think?
Okay. So, as far as I understand, like, we can kind of find some other tools for teaching, right? Rather than students' book, right? Student books.
I guess.
Well, um, mhm. Well, again, I think it's kind of correlates with the topic, yes, like with the theme of our stream, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I previously mentioned, yes, I still use students' books, yes, but again, I add my own materials to that, yeah. But I think for some teachers, yeah, why not? Well, we can find lots of other things to focus on, even songs, yes, or even some YouTube videos, like some vlogs, yeah, by some famous vloggers, yeah, why not to use them, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I have
That's
like a
why
bit.
the tech part can get outdated, yeah? Because you
Yeah.
need to always spice it up. For example, what I also do for listening with both C1 or what I would do with B1 or A1 is I would suggest lyricstraining.com.
Oh,
Lyrics
yeah.
training, yeah? With song.
Mhm.
It's great. You can find any contemporary song, a music video. You can create different activities at the click of a mouse. Like
Mhm.
done, snap of the fingers, you know. You can create it for like elementary learners, intermediate, and then advanced, and they can like engage in it. You can do it both in class, out of class. It helps to tune in the ear really well, you know.
Mhm.
So in this respect, definitely resources and creative teaching wins. Let's choose maybe one or two last questions, right? What will be the question, Anastasia?
Okay. Well, there was
Take
an
your time.
interesting one, like, does the time-consuming process of creating courses rubs off on the prices? So, is it like worth trying to create something in terms of money? Would you like to answer this one?
Oh,
Well,
this is an age-old one. You know what? Let's do this. By the way, are you comfortable talking about your charges for the class?
oh yeah, sure.
How much
Mhm.
do you charge per hour?
So now 1,500 rubles.
That's
Like,
it. I'm very close. I kind of do like 1,500, but you know, like lately I started charging 2,000 for 1 hour because first of all, as you can see, we're that creative, you know, and it's not an overstatement. Second of all, in your part, you have been through a lot. Exams, yeah, training sessions, CELTA. We know how much it costs, yeah? I mean, like you have
oh,
to really make sure that you want to invest into something like that, yeah? Then we create materials. We're that good. We're always learning. We follow people, right? So, I mean, it doesn't need too much introduction why, yeah? And then to understand it better, the reason why I mentioned that and asked you, when I start creating materials for a course book, for example, I can spend an evening on just trying to make sure that I understand what I'm going to write about. Yeah? Then another evening on making sure I understand the structure well. Then one more evening on watching the series, writing down all the possible phrases I want to teach. Then picking out the best ones and the most common ones, checking them on Newgram. It's for the fourth evening, right? And again, how many hours? 2, 3, 4 hours? And then again, depending on how much I charge, how much money could I get for that?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when I spend like maybe, I don't know, 12 hours in total on one episode, I can't charge the amount of money I charge per an hour. Yeah, per 1 hour. I mean that would be
Mm-hmm.
like a huge amount of money. Nobody would buy that.
No, of
So I
course.
try to find the happy medium, and I wouldn't say I'm too happy with this happy medium, because like I invest 12 hours of hard work, yeah, and expertise, and I charge, like, for example, one episode is like 1,500, now 1,700, but I'm like, at least I'm planting knowledge, ideas, inspiration, and I'm easing my teacher's way through learning and teaching, you know
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm happy about. So in terms of prices and charges, it might pay off if a lot of people buy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like generally selling stuff, yeah, it doesn't pay off. But
Mm-hmm.
again, I like the fact that there's going to be a little stand inside of your heads, those watching and learning. So that's why.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? Would you ever try to create a course book or something like that?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, right? But I have to put in a lot there, right? And again, I would probably stick to creating something for higher levels, not for A1, A2 levels,
Right.
yeah, because I think that there are like plenty of books which we can use, right, and supplement them with something, right? But I wouldn't also, like, set really high price for that, because again, we have to understand that if it's like too expensive, nobody's gonna buy it, yes, and we have to look at this like
Okay.
price, yes, in the market, right? I've never created anything for sale apart from one
You
presentation.
did. You did. Tell us
Yeah,
about that.
just one presentation, yeah, which I used with my young learner students for Halloween. Yeah, I think it's kind of cute. But I was selling it for like 200 rubles, just like kind of a symbolic price, like really, just to give it a go, just to see how it goes. And I was surprised that like 3 people bought it, and I got
Really?
some positive reviews. Yeah, like I was really proud. But the main thing that matters to me is like, this kind of pleasure, because I'm really into like looking for material, like finding some amazing pictures, yes, or some interesting videos, right? Or even if, for example, talk about like Christmas lessons, yes, there are plenty of materials for like New Year's resolutions
Oh
or for
yeah. Hmm.
celebration. And it kind of seems the same. Yes, so I wanted to find something different, to make something different, right? Yeah, and for New Year, for example, I created this video lesson with different traditions around the world, uh, just because it's easier for me to make something myself. I
Hmm.
will be sure, I will be secure that there are no mistakes, I will be sure how it goes, because when you take something from the internet, you're likely to find some, like pitfalls maybe,
Oh yeah.
so I'm really into the process of creating that. This is just something that I really like doing, right? I enjoy it. So, yeah, I would
And you
still not charge like too much.
how many hearts you're getting. That's great. You see, guys are just proving your message for sure. I think that what matters most is that, like once my teaching methods teacher said, Boris Nikolaevna, and I will always mention her because she's my, like, role model when it comes to teaching languages and teaching methods. She said, remember, whatever everybody says, whatever happens, you're first of all the native speaker of the classroom. That's why you have to be up to the task. Hence your beautiful, clear, near to authentic pronunciation and expertise. She believed it was really important to speak good English in all respects. And second of all, she would say, remember, you are the actors of a small theater. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make sure that not only do you entertain your students, which is not the goal, but you drive knowledge home.
Mm-hmm.
and I loved it. And you know what? I always looked at her and said, and kind of thought to myself, like, wow, I want to be like her, you know? I want to be like the one who inspires, the one who teaches not the book, but the students, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And hence my passion and unbridled passion and determination. Lada says, totally get you. I can't bring myself to use any other materials. For sure, because it's your signature material, Lada. Yeah? Whoever comes to you, you can make sure that you use your own material and it will never stand in the way. You know, it will be yours. You see? So for sure, for sure. I think last question, yeah, before we go, because we're that insatiable. I suggest I ask you this one, Nastya. Give me a moment. It's something that you kind of answered, but still, maybe you have ideas, all right? One of you guys asked, question 6, part 2, using real authentic sources obviously leads to the development of so-called learner autonomy. How do you encourage students to finally use them on their own? At what stage?
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to make sure, like, guys, know where to look if I'm not around?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I try to do that even at A2 level. Well, I encourage my students watch something or listen to something in English. Well, I told them that it's a good idea to subscribe, to buy the subscription, yes, to Oral, for example, because, well, one of my students, well, some of my students, they love this Friends TV series and they know it like by heart, yes, but it's a good idea just to even to listen to their speech, you know, like to get the maybe some peculiarities of pronunciation, you know, like, or to catch some words that they've learned before probably. So you kind of know the plot, yes? So, and that's what makes you, well, that's when you're able to focus on the language, right, itself. And, well, some of my students do watch the TV series, like, which they watched in Russian previously. Well, if we talk about lower levels, you know, yeah, because of course they cannot watch something new, absolutely new in English, and even if they use subtitles, that will just blow their mind, right? Yeah, and sometimes they ask me some questions like, okay, oh, I heard such an interesting phrase. Are you nuts? Is it about nuts that we eat or add something like or something? And they're like, okay, no, okay, let's talk about it. Yes, so, and they notice something really. Again, this is that creative use that well, you know, nuts like food, right? But then nuts like, okay, crazy. Yeah. And that really makes me feel proud. Like, okay, so they want it. Yeah. But again, it depends on the student's motivation. Yes, if they feel like it, if they feel like moving on. Yes, and if they really love what they do, like if they feel like passion for learning English, then it will work. Yeah. Or they listen to songs. Yes, I can recommend them some singers. Well, for example, Adele. Yes, you know how much I love her. Yeah. Yeah. So we also like discuss her songs sometimes. Yes, and I recommend students listening to this English music, right, to get some, again, to get some phrases. Yeah. Is that they can listen and listen again, right, and then to learn something eventually. Yes, and then they share that with me. Yeah. Or I ask them to, well, they're not authentic materials actually. Yes, they're more like graded readers. Yes, they're graded. Yes, but still, this is some kind of extra task. Yes, well, like to find a book to your liking and read it, and then share with me what you've read about. Yes, or if there are any like interesting or words, like amazing words that you've come across. Yes, so, well, I know it's not about authentic materials.
But
So
it's like about creating an element of success. You know,
well, yeah.
like, oh, I understand a lot. I can now read a book.
Yes,
You know?
and they come to listen. They're like so elated, yes, because like, oh, I know that, I got it. Yes, that's so cool. Yes, and that's what promotes, yes, like their further learning. Yeah.
Agreed. Could not agree more. I think, again, we need to plant this seed of inspiration, knowledge, yeah, and enthusiasm to make sure that students can survive in this vast land of English without us, because we can't just spoon feed them all the time and be there for them, you know, and then they will remember you with your, again, because students don't remember the words, yeah, they don't remember the grammar, they don't remember the story, maybe stories, yeah, okay, they text you read, they remember emotions, they remember elements of success, they remember your personality, I would say your professionality. There's this term these days, yeah, like professional personality. And that's what I remembered about my teachers too, you know, and that's what matters the most. show by example, lead by example, be the class act, and then people will probably, you know, follow, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
Monsanto plants that seed instead, yeah. So I think that concludes today's beautiful, thought-provoking, for me at least, you know, I can definitely say hands down, interesting, insightful live stream. I think, Anastasia, you have delivered an incredible experience story on your part with all of those things that you do and implement. And of course, when everyone follows your page, yeah, and see the results of your hard work, they will definitely see, oh, that girl practices what she preaches, you know?
Mhm.
So
Thank you. Thank you for having me. That was such a pleasure, really. Yeah, I
uh,
look up to you, and I'm really
uh,
honored to talk to you, really.
I'm sure
That was
that more streams together are to come for sure, because, you know, I'm just starting out. We're getting there. We're spreading awareness, hopefully dropping knowledge, guys. So make sure when you watch it in the recording, watch it on demand or watch it back, okay? Because it never hurts to watch it back. Leave some thoughts, leave ideas, leave your, you know, comments, and definitely hit likes. And most importantly, since I promised, today or tomorrow we're gonna negotiate this giveaway thing that we're gonna
Mhm.
do. Yeah, you will have to complete a few steps. You know, I'm not talking about money for sure. It's just about
Mhm.
like trying to encourage and support us with your likes, comments, and stuff like that. You know, something like that. We'll think of this. And again, I will remind you, those watching on VK, it's Instagram only. No cheating this time.
Oh, they changed it previously?
Yeah, they just waited for VK
Oh.
post to come out. But again, it's to their own.
Mhm.
All right. Anyways, thank you so much. That was insightful. And I hope to see you in other streams with me. Okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And thank you guys so much for watching. We expect a lot of ideas and thoughts from you too. All right? Yeah. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.